Hello, everybody. Welcome to the American Scouser Postmatch. What a game we just had. It could have gone all over the place, probably more blood pressure than I really needed. But we made it at the end with the 3 points and the win. I am your host, Timuchin, as always. And with us today is Gally. What's going on, Gally?
It's happening, gentlemen. I try not to drink beer during the week. This match made it happen by halftime.
Yes.
And with us, our nerdy by nature, VJ is with us. VJ, what's happening, man?
Not much, man. That was a exhausting game. That should not have been that exhausting a game.
Yes, especially the way it started. It felt like, this is going to be nice watching. I might have even leaned back, I thought, at one point, but it
Don't
just
dare lean back. Don't ever lean back.
Liverpool never lets you lean back, I guess that's the thing. Okay, so we talked, Gally, on Monday night's live recording of the podcast, and we talked about the possible lineups and stuff. Maybe we should skip that segment altogether now because we're not even getting close. So you see the lineup for today. Obviously, Gomez and our old friend Divock makes an appearance that, I don't think anybody expected either one of those. Maybe Divock. I didn't think anybody expected kind of like Gomez to be hopped into first team action this game. So what do you make out of that lineup when you see it?
I'd have to say, for starters, I was shocked that Origi was in the lineup, but we're not even going to go there because I think the biggest key and talking point to start off our post-match today should be Gomez and the difference we saw in what the back four looked like today comparatively to the first four matches we've seen on the spin. I'm going to come right out and say I believe Virgil van Dijk was not past fit to play 90 minutes, and that's why he didn't start. The physios do tests, strength tests. They just played on Sunday. I just don't see the gamble. So I'm completely okay with giving Virgil a break if either the medical science said it or Jurgen's heart just told him he needed to rest. Konate has to be in this lineup with Matip and not Gomez. And it's not about who's earned a right or the history. It's about a guy coming off a major injury, not getting game time minutes. And the old adage is you don't get match fit without playing matches. And one guy has played in the Champions League in the last year, and the other guy has worked his way back from two massive injuries. So I think Jurgen did get caught up a little bit here. I think the goal is, I think Konate will play on Saturday. So I'll make my mistake now predicting the lineup. I think Konate will play with Virgil on Saturday, and that was all in the plans because they're not running Matip out there, arguably our most informed player on the entire pitch. Might be Joel Matip since the start of this season. And you cannot play that man 3 times in 7 days and think that he is not going to pull a muscle. So I just feel like this was a rotational gamble, and I just think Klopp overthought it and should have played Konate from the start.
Look, we all do this, right? I know I do it. We want depth, and, we complain about not having depth and stuff like that. And obviously with depth, the reason you have depth is so that you can kind of rotate the squad and give these guys more minutes and not have somebody run out there every day. But whenever it happens, obviously we're like, oh, why is he not there? And it's kind of like a natural reaction. I guess I understand your point in terms of picking Gomez over Konate, and I do somewhat agree to it. And yes, we definitely want to play it safe, especially in the beginning of the Champions League still. And I think that kind of figured into the decision. I don't know if we're taking a risk like this, if it was like the fourth game or something like that. It's just kind of like the start of it. What do you make of that decision, VJ, in terms of Gomez? We totally understand, obviously, if VVD is not ready and, you're not going to risk Van Dijk to go out there and get injured again. We totally understand that, and that's fine. Yeah. In terms of the choice of Gomez, well, at least it wasn't Fabinho or Henderson as center back, I guess. But, yes. In terms of the choice of having Gomez, what do you make of that?
Well, this is the whole point of the summer, right? We moved and got Konate so that we wouldn't have to play Fabinho and Henderson in the center back role and give Van Dijk a break. Van Dijk has been absolutely spectacular, and Netherlands doesn't care. They're going to play him every chance they get because they have to. They have no backup. So, when he comes out for international break, he's not going to get any break. And he played great this weekend. I just wonder, and I'm with Gally, if the doctor said Virgil needs to take a break. I'm all on board with that. That's the whole purpose of buying Konate. Put him in with Matip because he's a solid defender and he has been playing. He played in the preseason. He hasn't played in the regular season, but he played in the preseason. He's had minutes. Gomez is coming off of reconstruction. And it's not like we're playing City on Saturday. We're playing Crystal Palace. Crystal Palace has some talent. So I'm not one of these guys who thinks they're going to win like 3 games this year. I think they've got some talent. But if you have Matip, which you said, Gally, I mean, right now Matip is our best defender, our best midfielder, and maybe our best forward. I don't know. But and without question, our best troll. He is so funny. But forget all of that. If you play Matip this weekend with Gomez against Crystal Palace, I think you're fine. I mean, he's not – Crystal Palace, they do have some talent, like I said. But a lot of what Milan has, the Crystal Palace doesn't have a speed up front. And, you know, if you're going to be playing against guys like Benteke and stuff like that, Gomez can hang. And he's coming off an ACL. It's not like he's coming off a shoulder injury or something like that. Putting him in against a team that, A, is not going to get the ball much, and B, is going to be doing a lot of crosses in and things like that. They're not going to try to beat you with speed because they don't have that speed. That's fine. That would have been a perfect place, I think, to bring him in. And honestly, I love Gomez. I've loved Gomez for years, but I just don't think this was the right place to do it. I'm totally on board. I will say, though, I'm totally on board with Virgil sitting because he cannot play every game in every position in every competition anymore because he is the most important person on the entire field. Timuchin, you said you leaned back for a minute. Never do that if Virgil's not on the field. If Virgil's on the field, you can watch the whole game way back over here. I know you can't see me, but you can watch the game way back here because there is a comfort that Virgil brings that's just hard to even really put into words. But Matip's been great. But they just get, if you noticed, both of the goals in a 2-minute period were because Matip was dragged into places he didn't need to be because other people were not doing their job.
Yeah.
See, here's my thing. And I guess, okay, play the devil's advocate over here. And by the way, talking about leaning back, I mean, you don't know me that well then, because if we could have 12 Van Dijks. It takes a lot for me to lean back, man. I just watch Paranoid. But my only thing with, I guess, picking Gomez over Konate was, you know, despite Konate having played preseason and everything as well as last year, he's still newer to the system. And perhaps, you know, this weekend we get Van Dijk back and Konate next to him. So he kind of has Van Dijk holding his hand as opposed to maybe Matip holding his hand. Could that play a part of it, or am I reading too much into what Klopp's thinking?
No, I think there's some validity in that. But I think what you do, though, then, is just shift the lineup around a little bit. So one of the things we have talked about, and I think we all agree, Trent is the best right back in the world, but he does have a weakness. He's not as great defensively. And so if you play Henderson over on that right side, then you have some cover naturally. And so I don't think you need the hand holding. So you drop a Konate in there with Matip, and you can fix the hand-holding, so to speak, with guys in the midfield to try to help him out. Plus, maybe you play Fabinho in a slightly more right-sided defensive midfield role, play Keita over on the left, and now you have that defense sort of sorted out. Because as much as I love Trent, and I'm one of these people, I will not ever stop telling people this because I get so many of these things wrong, but I watched him play when he was 15 years old on an academy game, and I was like, that dude's going to be a superstar. So he's always going to be my favorite player. But he's not the best defensively, and I don't think anyone would ever claim that he is. We have to make adjustments for that. But if we make those adjustments, I think you can put any real defender out there. Not any defender, but you could put a Konate, who is supposed to be excellent.
And he did well in the preseason. I say, Gomez maybe a bit more hesitance in the first goal, like maybe backpedals a bit too much to keep him on. Aside from that, I really thought that's, again, like Trent kind of like falling asleep and letting his side wide open there for that pass. But
Yep.
and the second goal, really, it's like a lucky bounce off of Matip that kind of like lands in front of the guy again. I thought Matip had that ball. Who again, Matip, I thought had like an excellent game, and I could have sworn he was the way the game was going. I thought he was definitely going to get one of his goals from like the corner kicks or something like that. But and I mean, the way the game started, you thought, especially with the penalty coming afterwards. And it wasn't like a badly taken penalty, well saved, I guess. But I mean, you look at the numbers, VJ, and you're like our numbers guy over here. I mean, this game should have been probably easily put to bed, even without looking at the numbers in the first half.
Oh, without question. So I tweeted it out sometime about 20 minutes into the game. Liverpool had 1.5 expected goals, had 13 shots and 6 shots on target, which is a decent game for some people. And that's what Liverpool had after 19 minutes. The penalty was dumb luck. That was bad luck. I believe if I read on Twitter correctly, James Pierce said that Salah has made 17 consecutive penalties. So he is a human. He's going to miss. So it happens, and all credit to the goalie on that. But the problem is Liverpool didn't put that second goal away. I think nobody is really that worried about that first goal from Milan if we're up 2-0. Once it's a tie game, all of a sudden the nerves hit, right? And the crowd starts kind of getting fidgety and all this stuff starts happening. If it's a 2-0 game at that point, then I don't think I'm worried about it. So we look at these expected goals. Let's look at the numbers here real quick. Total shots 23-7. That shows you the dominance that Liverpool had throughout the entire game. They dominated possession, they dominated shots, they dominated play. And really, you could argue that Milan played well for 5 minutes total, 2 minutes in the end of the first half, and then the last 2 to 3 minutes right before the 90-minute clock hit and we went into injury time. I think they played really well. But they also shifted their entire team to try to get that last goal, right? The expected goals number may not look like it's indicative of what the game felt like. But if we, as I explain expected goals to people so that we get a feel for what it really means, expected goals is a estimation of what the chances are of someone getting a goal based on a shot and based on the location of defenders and goalies. So Milan has a 1.56 expected goals. Look at that second goal. That's a 99% goal. So probably one of that 1.56 came from just that one shot, because if you're 6 inches from the goal and there's nobody in front of you, you should score the goal 100% of the time. So
somebody tell Harry Maguire that next time he has a shot from 6 inches out, because he finds ways to miss them.
Which I'm fine with. Let's be clear. I'm great with that. I love it. So, expected goals can be somewhat, this is the thing with stats. Everyone says, oh, they lie. If you don't understand them, they didn't lie, but it did feel like, I would say that if you had told me before at the end of the game, watching that, what the expected goals number was, I would have thought the Liverpool number was about that, because we did take some bad shots and those don't have very high expected goals. But I would have thought the Milan number would have been a lot lower until I realized, okay, that one right there. They really didn't. They collected over the course of a game half a goal equivalent. And almost all of it is off of 2 mistakes, 2 big mistakes that Liverpool made inside the box. And if you're going to make mistakes, there's literally one place you cannot do it, and that's inside your own box.
Yeah, I think it was a shock. I was almost glad the halftime whistle came, because it felt like they were in shock mode for a couple of minutes there. And, it would have been a chance, if anything, there might have been a moment where they could get the third or something. It felt like, just because of like the mode we were in, just we didn't know what hit us suddenly, because it looked like it was kind of in cruise control. But so I want to talk about a little bit of like the individual performances and kind of like take a look at, let's start with Divock, who did leave the game injured. But Gally, what do you make of him? Obviously, we didn't expect him to be in the lineup, but we do talk a lot about him, especially on our podcast.
Wow.
He's Paul Bickler's favorite player, as we all know. And so he does make an appearance in the Champions League, which is his zone. And I thought overall he did well.
I I thought he played well. I got to be honest. I was shocked when I saw his name. I wasn't sure I'd ever see his name again. I wasn't even sure he'd make the bench for a League Cup game after you can't make the bench. You know, when they're bringing 2 goalkeepers for Premier League matches, I am shocked that Divock gets a start in the Champions League. Why? I don't know, because I put myself out there all the time, similar to what VJ said. If you throw bleep against the wall enough, eventually it will stick. So I pick lineups and make bold decisions. I never in a million years would have said this because it would have just been so stupid. No one would have actually even taken it as, you know, for merit. He played well. I thought the scoop pass on the second goal was outstanding and classic Divock. I thought a few different times he was in the exact right place. He was just a step slow, which once again is classic Divock. And he always looks like he's flat-footed to me. And I think that comes to not playing, not getting enough minutes, and not being ready. So when it really comes down to it, today's performance by Divock was fun, but like most Divock appearances, it just wasn't enough there to make me think he pushes anyone in this squad to be better at their job by showing up to training. And that's why I've always questioned. I think if you're a substitute, you have to be the type of guy. We haven't seen what Taki can produce yet. We don't even know what he is. But I'll tell you this. Every time I see him, he looks like a kid who shows up every single day to practice and is just a gnat, is annoying, drives everyone crazy, works hard, runs fast, probably kicks people on the side, and then smiles with his like 13-year-old boy wry smile. And at the end of it, that works. And I think Divock shows up like a dude who just swings it from side to side, just looking at everyone like, they'll give me a shot and I'll make a play. And if they don't, I'll look good on the bench. And it's just, it doesn't work for me, honestly. So as good as he played today, I was still kind of underwhelmed.
I don't, watching Divock is so frustrating sometimes because the dude has so many physical abilities. He's fast for his size, and he has size, even though he doesn't use it as much as you would want him to. And he almost looks like, you know, like as you play on teams, there's always one dude in every team, right? Like you're like, dude, if you tried, you'd be so good. Like if you tried harder, kind of thing. And that's the impression I always get out of him. They're like, dude, just hustle. You're gonna be so good. But yeah, I don't know if it's just the way he carries himself sometimes. Even when he's pressing, I felt like anytime he does actually press, he has those long, like Matip-like legs that he actually won a lot of balls with the pressure he was putting up front. But he doesn't have the as fast as, you know, like he doesn't just have that energy to just like run over there and press like Mo would or Mane would or Bobby or Jota would. He's kind of like, should I press? Yeah, what the hell? And then he just goes there and he wins the ball, but he just gives that look to you. Like, you know, Jamie says, you know, he has a belt. I don't get that from him. I feel like he does, because he doesn't have any negative effect on the rest. I just feel like if he really is like, dude, you want to really play soccer? I mean, the kid is like, you know, he's not like he's 16 where you're like, if you want to really do this, you should really apply yourself. You're going to be great. But I just find that's overall, you know, kind of like frustrating about him. What did you make of his appearance there, VJ?
So I've always been a fan. And honestly, he's scored only when it matters. I guess it didn't matter today, but he has always scored when it matters, right? I mean, I won't ever forget screaming and yelling at the Houston Liverpool fan club when he scored against Barcelona, both of those goals. I remember watching the Merseyside derby where Pickford does a typical Jordan Pickford thing and leaves it for him to score. He's done, and then the Champions League, obviously the Champions League final where it was still a 1-0 game all the way until the very end, and he finished it off, and we all got to celebrate. So the guy has been a part of some of these huge moments, right? But I feel like when Liverpool bought him, what we were sold is Romelu Lukaku today. If you look at Romelu Lukaku, not at the time, we were sold that he would become Romelu Lukaku.
We got screwed if that's the case.
Yes, because if at that time, what we were shown as a top end, look at Lukaku today. That battle with Van Dijk, I think, honestly, if Chelsea hadn't lost that second man, that would have been an unbelievable game with Van Dijk versus Lukaku. I think he's one of the best strikers in the world. I don't like him, obviously. He's played for United, he's played for Chelsea, but just on the field, he's absolutely fantastic. And what we were sold is that he would turn into what Lukaku has turned into. And so you have this extreme where you have, I think, kind of a bigger guy who can play with his feet, who can run the channels, who can do a lot of these things, but he just doesn't seem to. I don't know if it's talent. I don't know if it's his brain. I don't know what it is, because I think, Gally, you said he seems flat-footed all the time. Is he flat-footed because he's slow? Is he flat-footed because he's lazy? Or is he flat-footed because he doesn't notice that, hey, I see this coming? Look at Bobby. Bobby's never flat-footed because he sees things before they happen. And a part of this is also playtime. He's out there with Mane and Salah all the time. And so, just like, I'm a hockey fan, and so when I watch hockey games, there are guys who are doing things, and you're like, why would he do? Oh, there's the puck. He just scored. They know each other, right? And so Origi doesn't have that with really anyone on this front three because he's been so inconsistent. But I agree that I feel like his body and his size and his physical tools would tell you we should have gotten more out of him. So maybe I was impressed because I expected nothing. I don't know. But it was fine. It was fine, but that's it.
So I'm going to jump right in because David Cosgrove is spot on here. Like, there are very few times
Boy, this is
people make comments that make me laugh out loud, and I think you got all three of us to laugh. So, David, kudos to you right here, my friend. But in all seriousness, I want to be at that water park. I'll probably take the selfie with him. I'll thank him for scoring the goals against Barca and the goal in the Champions League final. Yep. But VJ couldn't be more right. I made this comment on one of my first ever appearances on the pod with Jamie at the time and Timuchin. And I mentioned how when they signed Divock after that World Cup, how excited I was, because many people forget during that World Cup, he displaced Romelu Lukaku as the number one. He scored 3 enormous goals, including a couple that were just like some of the finest goals he ever scored for Liverpool, running down a channel, using his speed, using a little bit of pace, and then turning a corner. I felt like he was a Jurgen Klopp guy from day one. He loved him. He called him back on loan early. And if it wasn't for that disgusting shite from Everton breaking his leg, I honestly believe his career trajectory could have been completely different with Liverpool. For all we know, he'd be wearing number 9. But the difference is he didn't want it enough, because he'd rather be at the top of the water park taking pictures with jamokes like me, thanking him for goals he scored and getting paid to do nothing. And I think that's a little bit of the problem. He looks like a guy who is going to weigh 25 pounds more than he should 15 minutes after he retires. And someday he's going to make John Barnes look thin.
See, man,
dude, that's
okay.
Crazy.
So I have to hold on. Let me defend Divock a little bit so that we're just
no defending it. He's been here for 8 years.
Than here, so let me do it on his behalf, I guess. Which Bickler can't stand Divock, by the way. We just make fun of him that he likes him, but okay. So here's the thing: if this was the case, he must be doing something. One of the comments earlier was that Klopp really likes him, because if we kind of made use of what he had at the time, and he had some huge goals, and I would argue that perhaps his calmness and like his attitude sometimes helps him get those clinical finishes. I mean, that corner taken quickly, that is a very difficult finish, right? Mm-hmm. We always talk about the corner, but that strike going in, that is not an easy ball to hit. And maybe that his overall calm, collected attitude helps him with this finishing, which I guess we should see more of it then. But okay, so here's my thing. If that was the case, and we thought, that's the guy we signed, kind of like VJ is saying, and we made use of what we could, what if Klopp didn't think, if he wasn't doing something on the practice pitch, or if we didn't think he was going to bring value in the long run, why did we sign him to an extension? Why would Klopp have him signed to an extension unless we thought, hey man, we can really get some good money for him? Because if you think about it, if you really wanted to cash in off of him, that summer was ideal, right? When we won the Champions League and then he would probably not mind it either if he got like a bigger contract or better wages or something like that. But we didn't. We kind of like kept him, and I feel like there has to be a reason for that. I mean, unless he's massaging like Klopp or something, just like he's like, "Come on, man, relax, we're good," or he just I don't know if it's like. I mean, he has to be doing something. And I remember like watching other players talk about him. This is how the dude is, like kind of like always late, or just very easy going and stuff.
And the thing is, that's okay if you want to be like that, if you're going to score regularly. There are all kinds of players that we can see, and Bickler's right. He's gotten by on instinct and physical tools. He's still, and I'm not going to say he may be John Barnes size, but let's be honest, I'm 46 and I'm John Barnes size. I get it. It ain't easy, but he has physical tools, and I'm sure he will be. He works hard. I'm sure he's in practice doing the things that he needs to do, because we've heard for however long Klopp has been around, if you don't show it on the practice field, you're not going to be in the game, no matter how much we all think this guy's good or not. Look at how long it took Keita to play. Look at how long it took a lot of guys to come in and play. You have to prove it to him on the practice pitch. So maybe Origi has, but there's so many times when it's just so close and there's just not maybe that's what he's doing, Chris. But maybe I don't know what it is, but there's something about how he's just always like 3% off. But when you're at that level, 3% off is the difference between being a superstar and being kind of okay. I mean, Gally, what are you thinking? Because I just think like he's so close to being good, but he hasn't shown it except 5 or 6 times, and we've talked about him all.
Yeah, I again, I think there's some great comments coming in, and thank you to Chris and David and Paul and everybody who's communicating with us today through the chats on both Facebook and YouTube TV. But honestly, I feel that the signing was originally done to secure the asset and to what Timuchin said earlier, to sell this player and actually make a profit. It almost happened a couple times. I think that Liverpool did what they do, which is dig in at a number and say, if you don't hit our number, then we'll keep the player, because we don't dislike anyone at our club. And that's a big difference with Jurgen Klopp. He doesn't sell players. He allows players to leave. And I think it's a really big difference. That's why, Emre Can ran his contract down and Genie ran their contracts down. Ownership might not have wanted to sign them. Klopp might have wanted them to be there. But he didn't need to sell them because he was happy with them being part of the club. And I think he's still happy with Divock playing a role at the club. I think 2 years ago, there was an opportunity maybe to sell him off to Wolves. And we were trying to get like 30 million at peak value. And I think it was a big mistake because I think a club like that would have been perfect for the player and for us. And we would have got the money infused in the club we needed. But here's the thing. We talk about players' willingness to be at Liverpool. And Divock Origi, to Paul's point earlier, carries one of the things we need a squad player to have, which is you need a few passengers on a Jurgen Klopp team that aren't going to fight and cry when they play once a month. And Divock takes his $110,000 a week, and he drives fancy cars, and he dresses in the finest threads, and he puts out social media posts. And you know what he does? He shows up to training and he smiles. And as long as he's doing that and he doesn't cause problems, I honestly believe that Mamadou Sakho would be like the 5th or 6th choice center back if he was a good human being, because Jurgen Klopp loved him and loved his personality. But he realized quickly he wanted to be a passenger and a clown. And there's no room for that at Liverpool anymore. And I feel like that's a culture thing. I
think you're absolutely right. All the FSG out morons on Twitter want, $300,000 and $75 million players to be happy with getting 13 minutes a game, 6 games a year. And why aren't we signing them? If you're one of those guys, why would you come here, right? If you're a guy who is only going to, if you're a 24-year-old winger, a right winger, Rafinha, and you're at the top of your game, why would you come to Liverpool when the best right winger in the entire planet is in front of you? How many games are you going to get? You're not going to get that many. And so you need guys like Divock who will be there. Now, I prefer all of those guys be guys like Harvey Elliott, Curtis Joseph, younger guys who know that they're not going to be at that level. but you can't always get that. The academy can't throw out 17 bench quality Champions League bench quality players every year. It can't. So you need guys like Divock, who, like you said, I don't think he's lazy. I just don't think he's fully there. And I think a part of it is, and I don't mean that mentally like he's not smart. I just don't think he has game talent. And so there are times, there was a great play 6-7 minutes into the game where he's running down the channel and he's about a step slow. Robertson throws this beautiful pass in, and because he's a step slow, he hits it with the outside of his foot and it goes flying out. Now, it was a corner anyway because someone else tipped it, but I swear if he's a half a step closer, he at least makes the goalie work, which, if the goalie if it makes a great save, what can you do? You tip your hat off and you go on. But like, he could have made the goalie work there. And like you said, Timuchin, that corner taken quickly, everyone talks about Trent, right? That was not an easy goal, especially at that time of the game. It's now a tie game. We're going into extra time against Barcelona. Anfield is absolutely jacked. The players are jacked, all of that. And that's the problem is, he has that talent, but he's not a horrible bench player. It just sucks that he wasn't on it today. And yes, Paul, evidently we can't just sign 20-year-old superstars to sit on the bench. Even if the FSG out nerds on Twitter think we should, it doesn't work that way.
While we're on the Twitter conversation, we missed a point earlier where we called Joel Matip the best troll at Liverpool, and there is no question. There is no better follower troll. But for anyone not following the American Scouser Twitter page, VJ holds his own when it comes to trolling Man United and Everton people and supporters. I call it people is a loose term when they're talking, especially about the scum. But anyone yesterday who would have saw VJ needling and digging in, literally laying good 6-7 inch tackles on players and every supporter from United as they cried in their beers and in their pies and in their coffees all around the world. So anyone not following the American Scouser Twitter, you got to get on there because VJ does a nice job of trolling.
Thank you.
But I also feel like we might have put too much of this post-match to Divock Origi.
Yeah, I was going to say, good thing I guess we're talking about him this game. God forbid if you had a poor performance, you guys just smashed him to death. And by the way, he had a beautiful assist too. Let's just at least mention that. But
can I talk about my favorite player?
Hopefully his injury is not big because, like I say, he's the guy who's going to kind of give some rest to the front three with until at least Bobby comes back. So. But here's the thing. So we're talking about these guys on the bench. So let's move on from poor Divock. I'm gonna put him away so that he doesn't get hurt anymore. Let's hope he's not watching this. So obviously when these injuries happen, that creates opportunities for other players. So today we saw Keita out there. So Gally, let's start with you on this one. What did you make off of Keita's performance? Because it's something that I almost feel like today when I saw the lineup, I felt, and I even talked about it on our Discord channel that we have with the American Scouser contributors, that I thought this was a huge game for Divock and Keita to be able to kind of solidify their status, I guess, in the squad. Keita gets an opportunity. Perhaps it would have been Harvey out there if or maybe Thiago if it was fully fit, 90-minute fit, or maybe it was being safe for Crystal Palace. But same thing for Divock up front to be able to get. And I thought Divock overall, despite the bashing we gave him with his overall career, and a game-wise, I thought he took his chance pretty decent, had the assist, made some good moves, and he was a threat at times. He was in the box and stuff like that. What did you make out of Keita's performance and how he made use of his opportunity?
So I feel like Naby Keita is a conundrum, a complete conundrum. I don't know what to say because honestly, when I watch him play, I'll read on Facebook or follow on social media, and he'll either be being killed. I don't feel he played that bad today. I know you were a little bit critical of him at one point, Timuchin, in the Discord channel. I thought he kind of fell asleep a little bit on the first goal, because he was pulled onto the left-hand side, actually. He had or right-hand side, he had rotated, and he was over on that side of the pitch, kind of near where Trent fell asleep. And I thought he might have tracked back a little bit better and helped out. but I don't think it was his fault. I don't know what else he was supposed to do today, though. I thought he was linking up pretty well with Robertson in the first half. I thought they were a nuisance in pressing. I thought they combined well together. And I just think the guy needs a run of matches in a side with a consistent player playing on the left and a consistent left back with him to give him an opportunity, the same way we talk about how Harvey bedded in with Trent and Mo and really started to look like he was finding his way. So I don't feel like it was a terrible performance or he took a huge step back. And he's going to have to play a role this year in that midfield for this team to succeed, because we might get to Curtis Jones and his performance today, which I thought was bright, but I still have some concerns. But once again, I thought Ox came on and was just kind of a passenger just drifting around the pitch. So if we can't rely on Ox and we've lost Harvey for a long period, we need, as Jamie would say, we need Naby Lad to show up and give us some of that Naby Lad from RB Leipzig. And you see it at times, but today was just another piece of the conundrum and the enigma that is Naby Keita at Liverpool Football Club.
And that's the thing. I know, I always get crap that I give probably too much criticism to Naby. But my thing with Naby is, you say that, right? We say a run of games to be able to get into his groove. And, I feel like sometimes he almost tries too hard. Harvey Elliott did not have a run of games to get his groove, right? In terms of like being slot into that spot and being productive and, bringing more to the game. I feel like almost sometimes Naby tries a bit too hard to like feel that pressure to create. Like you don't get that from Henderson, where Henderson is very content with like moving the ball around, like doesn't feel like he has to create something every time. Even Thiago, even if there is nothing open, he's content with like, like circulating the ball and stuff like that. I feel like Naby sometimes forces a bit too much. And then, like Jamie says, kind of like turns into trouble and loses the ball or physically gets, pushed out of the ball. Suddenly he has two guys on him. It's almost like he's trying to make that brilliant pass instead of sometimes kind of like letting the game come to him. I guess that might go back to you saying, having a run of games. But we talked about this on the podcast with like Ox, for example, where they're almost like trying to show their value while they have the opportunity, and it kind of backfires because they're trying too hard. Does that make sense?
Yeah, let me add a little bit. I know I'm the numbers guy, but I'm about to throw on my psychiatrist hat on here for a minute. So I think you mentioned a couple different people who have different roles in this. So Harvey Elliott has all the time in the world to bed in because he's 20. He is a Liverpool kid. He has all of the fans behind him, and he cost what? After the tribunal, 10 million, right? Jordan Henderson is the captain of this club. He can do whatever he wants to do, and we will all support him. Thiago has nothing to prove. Last year is the first time in 10 years he didn't win a league. 10 years. Dude doesn't have to prove anything. So if he comes here for 30 million and he sucks, people will be like, oh my gosh, he sucks. And he'll be like, okay, count all the rings. You got them? Do you have them? I have 3 Champions Leagues. I have 9 league titles. I don't know how many random cups along the way, a Spain World Cup, whatever. I don't care if you don't like me. Naby came in. He was 22. He cost 66 million. And 4 years later, in many cases because of injury, he is viewed as the only real failure of this transfer group since Klopp has come in and put, with Michael Edwards, Klopp, and Dave Fallows running all of the scouting, those 3 have not made a mistake. Maybe you could argue here or there, but they're never big mistakes, even if they have made any. The Origi not selling might have been a small mistake, but we're talking about tiny. 66 million. He's the 3rd most expensive buy, and the other 2 are the best players in their world at their position. Alisson is arguably the best goaltender in the world. Virgil van Dijk is not arguably the best center back in the world, period. And so he has all of that pressure on top of him. And then I'm going to add one small thing. This is only for this last week, but the dude just left a country that was basically in war, and he was trapped in a hotel, not sure if he was going to survive or not. Guy's had a crazy week. Now, all of that to say, I still thought he played really well. He didn't have the role that he normally does. He was intent. His job today, I think, was to retain the ball and move the ball. He was not intended to be the primary attacker, and he was not intended to be the primary defensive midfielder. Fabinho handled the back end, and his job was to keep the ball and move it around. Honestly, kind of what Henderson does really well. His job was to do what Henderson does, and Henderson spent a lot more time going up the field attacking, and he was rewarded with a goal for that. But if you look at the numbers, I'm just going to read some numbers. First of all, on my app, I thought this was really great. Naby Keita completed the most dribbles in the match. He was 3 of 6. Doing 50% on dribbles is a very good number. He also was the most accurate passer on the field with 95% accuracy. So he got the ball, he moved the ball. I agree with Jamie that sometimes he will turn into positions where he shouldn't, but he gets out of it. He was dispossessed he was not dispossessed at all during the game. Wait,
where are you getting these numbers from, man?
I have so
actually Opta just said that Naby Keita was the most efficient midfielder in the first round of the Champions League.
That's craziness, because I remember like specifically one incident on the left-hand side in the second half where he turned into 2 guys.
And I'll jump in. This is where I think stats, the whole stats lie. And, I know anyone who listens to Sirius XM and has heard, Ray Hudson lose his mind on what stats do to the game and where you can put your statistics. So the truth of the matter is, but really, he wasn't as bad as he will be made out to be, because it comes down to money. And I think that's where it's unfair to him, not the criticism, because criticism comes when you get a lot of money, you are handed an iconic jersey. Let's be honest. When they signed him, do you guys realize the year he started in the Premier League, he was Paddy Power's 3rd leading candidate to be Premier League Player of the Year in his first season? That was the actual pressure that was on him when he came. It didn't feel that way. People forget he was the Bundesliga Player of the Year at RB Leipzig as an attacking midfielder. And to David's point, I think what he does do better is dribble, and I think he carries. But to be totally honest, I don't think we've seen enough of that to warrant all of the love for him. He has to show it. And I feel like this has the making, and I hope I'm wrong because I've been a supporter. I think this has the making of Angel Di Maria at Man United. That this guy's going to land somewhere else, whether it's AC Milan in a year and then 3 years later, he's going to be 29 years old and playing at Real Madrid, starring in their midfield. I genuinely believe the player is in there that has world-class ability that Jurgen Klopp and everyone saw. Maybe it doesn't fit the system. Maybe it doesn't fit the city, or it doesn't fit the time. But I don't think putting him on the bench to roll out other players that we have just as many questions about is actually a way to improve the process. I think for this squad to reach maximum heights, we have to get something out of Naby. So I'll put that on the world-class manager to figure out.
And I think Paul made a good point.
What was this? Because I didn't.
I rarely say that. What's funny is Paul and I are very opposite in our personalities, but we agree on like 90% of things. It's really funny.
That's scary.
That's very scary
for you, yes.
But I agree with Paul on this. People don't think about what Genie did. I have been trying to analyze what Genie did for years, and I don't know that I fully can quantify what he did. But he did a lot of these little things that you need somebody in the midfield to do. So we all, and you guys know me, Fabinho is probably one of my favorite players on this entire squad. So now you lost it, Paul. But anyway, I probably trust your ex more than you, to be quite frank. But anyway.
I definitely do.
Yeah.
I haven't met either in person.
Either have I. It doesn't matter. But, when we talk about Fabinho, we can put numbers, the eye test, no matter what analysis you want to do, we can put a case together if you only use the eye test, if you only use numbers, if you are smart and do some sort of middle ground, you can make the case that Fabinho is one of the best center midfielders in the world, right? And you can do it with numbers, eye test, all of those things. You couldn't do that with Genie, and I don't know that you can do that with Keita. But Genie would just turn in performances like this. He would average 95% passing. He was also a little bit older, and so he had and get more game time. So he was a little bit smarter, and so he wouldn't turn into those things. But remember, the Genie that we bought was an attacking midfielder. He turned into 2 and 3 people all the time in the first year or two. But we don't remember that because he was $25 million coming off of a relegated team. And so the expectations are a lot lower. And I really think a lot of that comes down to those things. If we dropped an alien onto the planet and said, what do you think of that guy? I think they would say that Naby Keita is a very good soccer player. But we have these expectations because I remember when he first came, one of my favorite accounts is an account on Twitter called StatsBomb. They do a lot of stuff, very statistic based. They're their own company. They use a lot of Opta stuff, but now they've moved on past Opta because they're so good. Anyway, they said that Liverpool is buying an attacking midfielder and a defensive midfielder on the field at the same time. Their view was that we were essentially going to be able to play 12v11 because he was performing in the same time as good as very good attacking midfielders statistically and as good as great defensive midfielders statistically. When you come up, and then you talked about Paddy Power, the third highest rated guy to win the champ or to be player of the year. These are expectations that are insane.
Yeah.
Plus, there was a year. Don't forget, we had a year where we waited for him. So all the folks did was write letters and emails, and we bought him, and we were so excited, and it was like a coup, but he's going to stay there for a year. And then he had the great season. Then he got hurt. And that just started what I felt like was just an uncomfortable betting. And I thought giving him number 8 the year after Gerrard left was just an absolute mistake. You know, let him wear 18 and then for a couple of years and slide into that jersey. I just thought it was a lot. But to be honest, we could talk about Naby, we can talk about Fabra, we can talk about all these players. But to me, I thought it was exciting. I know someone mentioned it earlier. I thought seeing Curtis Jones on the pitch today was a fun thing. I thought it was a really great point. But I will be honest, I've been critical of him at times, especially when he plays in the midfield 3, because I think he wants to attack and he wants to score and he has flair in his game. But that leads to him making an extra dribble. He did it twice late in today's match where he could have released people or did things. He should have taken the ball to the corner once, but he thought about scoring the third goal or fourth goal because it's just who he is. And I love that. But what I love the most was he came on as an attacking replacement, which lets me think he is going to step into the 4th, 5th, or 6th spots when we need to rotate, that he's going to get a start on a left wing or on a right wing and start to give time to Mane, who once again was not good for the period of time he was put on the pitch. I know David, I think, had that comment. I would agree with him. He wasn't good. His touch wasn't great. He looks like he is lacking of confidence, clearly. But it's not just confidence because there was just a personality about him today that didn't look the same. And I know he hates being a substitute. He's mentioned that many times. And I expect him to come out against Crystal Palace. I think he has scored in all but 2 appearances against Crystal Palace in his Liverpool career. So I expect him to have a good day from the rip and start on Saturday. But at the same time, you know, Sadio was a little bit alarming today. So the idea of hopefully getting a healthy Taki in the play, hopefully getting some minutes out of Curtis in the front 3, that was exciting for me today because that's where I want to see him playing in the Liverpool side in the final third, because I think he is a little bit of a liability in the middle of the pitch at times. You want to talk about a guy turning into trouble.
I would agree with that. He does turn into trouble. He's young. He'll get over that. But I agree. I think fit-wise, he's a better forward than he is a midfielder. But I think in the next year to 2 years, he'll be a good rotation midfielder while being a fantastic front 3 guy. I don't think he's ever going to be Steven Gerrard in the midfield. Not that many people will ever be, but I don't think he's ever going to be this attacking dynamo in the midfield because he's going to forget about the other things. But I think he's the guy that I would love over the next 2 years for him to be a primary or very close secondary starter on the wing. And when we need a spot start in the midfield, he'll be fine. He won't be out of place, and he'll do the things he needs to do. But I think he would be better off up in the front. And then I want to comment on what Cosgrove asked about Mane. Dude, I don't know what to do. He looks like he's thinking constantly. And as an engineer, that's awesome, but not as a football player with that kind of skill and instinct. When he was at his best, I still will never forget. It was a Champions League game where against City, he's coming down the left wing and he does the stutter step. And I think Otamendi still has a torn groin from that 5 years later. He put Otamendi on the ground and made him fall into about 6 different pieces. It was unbelievable. And there's no way he thought to do that. There's no way he thought to do that. Yes, Bickler, that's exactly right. Maybe you can hook him up with a therapist. He's thinking on the field. And I'm not saying that, just like we talked about with Origi, sometimes he's not thinking on the field. I don't mean thinking in terms of how to play the game fluidly, but he's thinking like, should I take a step here? Should I not take a step here? Should I do this? Should I do that? And some of those things that were so great about him are instinct. Now, we've all watched where he didn't make a pass he should have, or he shot and hit a steward in the upper deck. But you know what? Give me that over shaky, questionable, I don't know what I'm doing, Sadio. Give me the guy that's running at 130 miles an hour that, like Spinal Tap, he's turned to 11 and you can't stop. I would rather have that because he's going to be magnificent most of the time. And every now and again, he's going to hit Klopp by accident with a ball that comes off his foot. It's going to happen. He's going to do something absolutely crazy. But he's so good when he does that. He'll miss a pass he shouldn't. He'll hit a ball he shouldn't. But give me the guy who's not thinking, who's just running and playing hard. That guy was awesome.
I think that's the thing with him is, when you talk to, when you listen to like other defenders talk about, how to defend the front three and stuff for Liverpool. I mean, the biggest thing about Sadio is the fact that you can't predict what the heck he's going to do. Because I think he just plays with that, like the natural, and he has the speed and the agility. And I think when he thinks that, the natural instinct part of it kind of goes in the background and he's overthinking things and stuff like that. But I really think, despite his, performance, he has still scored goals and plus like the Chelsea one, he's still, in the game and trying hard. And I think that's the only way, kind of like talking about, like we were talking about some of these other players where they need more game time to be able to get back to where they should be. But I really think he will, the more he plays, and he's only a couple of goals back to back away from being that guy again, because he can shake that off. Okay, so I don't know about Bickler's therapist, mind you, for Sadio, because if that's the Bickler's therapist just approves of him being on the podcast for therapy. So I don't know if we want that for Sadio moving forward. But so we got the 3 points, which was the key thing. And Porto actually almost got away with 3 points at Atletico, and VAR overturned it. I have not seen the highlights yet, but still they managed to steal a point. I would consider, especially in this group where, a lot of quality teams, a home win is huge to get those 3 points, and we did manage to get it, and kind of like makes Atletico's situation a bit more tricky now that they lost points at home to Porto, because Porto is like the same type, I feel, where they can really hit you on the counter. So it's not an easy team always to play at home. It's almost like an easier team to play at Portugal sometimes when they have to come at you so you can hit them on the counter and stuff. But real quick, as we wrap this up and we look ahead to the weekend, and God forbid we have like a terrible record with this, but what do you guys expect out of the lineup, having seen this and like some of the injuries, and obviously how that affected how many minutes people got? Because I don't know if Salah was meant to play, for example, as much as he did, or initially the design was to have him come off at 60 maybe for Sadio or whatever and do the reverse at Crystal Palace. So I feel like something's changed because of how this game went, as opposed to, taking the huge lead in the beginning and like kind of running that through. So Gally, we'll start with you since you have a great record at this based on our.
Yeah, I'm great. I get everything wrong. It's wonderful. I think Kelleher's going to start in goal. I'm just kidding. I think what we're going to get is I will not be shocked at all to see Shimikas at left back. And it does scare me a little bit because I do believe it will be Konate's first start. But I think the way you mitigate that is you have Shemikas playing with Virgil next to him. And then you have Konate. I do think Trent will get another start, though Neko's got to be up soon. In the midfield, I expect it to be probably the one I've been to keep saying it until I get it right, which is Hendo, Fab, and Thiago. One of these days I'll get that 3 right. Maybe Milner will come in for Hendo if he doesn't want to play him. I think up front you'll see Jota and Mane start for sure. And, the fantasy guy in me is nervous. I have this sneaky feeling that Mo Salah will be coming off the bench if he plays against Crystal Palace. He won't be happy about it, but he has to rotate these guys eventually. And maybe, just maybe, the bright little moment we saw from Curtis Jones today will get him his first start against Crystal Palace filling in. I know it's a lot of changes, but I genuinely believe we saw today Jurgen Klopp is planning to rotate his squad, especially early in this season. They have played more football than just about anyone else, especially at the elite level in the Premier League with international responsibilities, the 2 deep Champions League runs, and then playing the way they have. So I'll be very interesting to see where they go.
How about you, VJ? What are you expecting out of this?
So I took a quick peek at the fixture list before this question, and I'm going to say that the front 3 is going to be Jota, Mane, and Salah. And the reason I'm going to say that is because 3 days later they played Norwich in the Carabao Cup, and we know that while all of us Liverpool fans would love the quad or the treble, Klopp doesn't care. He cares about 2 tournaments, this one and the one during the weekends. That's it. And so I think you'll see Cujo and a bunch of kids coming out in that game. So I think you'll see the big 3 without Firmino, obviously. I think you'll see Salah. I think you'll see Salah, Mane, and Jota at the top. I do think eventually the trio of Fabinho, Henderson, and Thiago makes a lot of sense. And I think this game might be a place where it makes a lot of sense because we're going to have the ball for 70% of the game. Crystal Palace doesn't have the ability to do that. And Thiago's passing and his vision. So he's a guy who is the opposite of Sadio. He doesn't need to go at 100 miles an hour. He needs to be thinking the whole time because he's one of the most intelligent passers of the ball I've ever seen. And so if he's got his thinking cap on, he'll find guys everywhere. And then I think in the back, this might be the Nico game. I don't know why. I'm hesitant to ever think Klopp will bring a new guy on until he actually does. So I think it'll be Virgil and Matip in back with Tsimikas and maybe Nico, maybe Trent.
I can't. What about you, Timuchin?
I don't know, because that really freaking worries me now for my fantasy team because I have Trent and Salah for freaking God's sake. So trying to hang in there ahead of Bickler, doing my best to hang in there, at least stay in the game at the end of September. I do not see Nico. I do see Trent, especially if you're starting Costas on the left, which does make sense to me, especially at home. I would think Trent will be on the right-hand side because, that's kind of how we break down teams at home with the ball coming from the wings, and that's almost too many changes. I feel like especially if we're bringing Konate, I do think Matip will be rested as well. Probably should be put in some bubble wrap so we need him again. But I think VJ makes a really good point in terms of the front trio with that game looming against Norwich, where you're probably gonna see Taki, Ox, and the gang, coming, and then probably like Milner captaining them and stuff like that with a couple of youngsters. I do think it does make sense in that sense to have the trio with Mane, Jota, and Salah up front. But so hopefully in a few days we'll get together again and talk about a win there. We squeaked in this one, man. Had to be a lot more stressful than it had to be. But any parting thoughts, gentlemen, before we call it post-match?
How great is it to hear You'll Never Walk Alone on a European night at Anfield with fans in the stadium? How much we miss that. The idea that, the last match played in front of fans on a European night in that stadium was Adrian kicking that ball out and them losing to Atletico Madrid. The last game played in Europe last year with fans in the stadium. I think it just shows why these special nights happen. And I think we should just be so happy. And it's also why we should take all this so seriously and hope that they're taking it seriously over in England so that, we don't go back to ever playing games behind closed doors. Because I'll be honest with you, I'm not sure I would have rather talked to you guys on the Discord channel and listened to it on Sirius XM if the game doesn't have fans in it, because watching it on TV really felt like a training session. And I realized how much I love this game because of the supporters. And, that came through to me. If I took one thing out of today is that we're very, very lucky and we have the best atmosphere in all of professional sports.
What's up, BJ? What do you have, BJ?
I got nothing. Because that's exactly right. I'll just end on that.
Yeah, but way to wrap it up for us, man. We appreciate it. Well, thanks a lot, gentlemen, and thanks a lot for everybody joining with their comments and their likes. Join us after the Crystal Palace game, and we'll be talking about yet another win, hopefully with better blood pressure levels. Have a good day, guys.